Good evening and welcome to tonight's event if you're in the UK. Good morning if you are joining us from California, as our guests this evening are. My name is Johnny and I'll be your host for tonight's live stream. On the call, we also have my colleagues Jiwei and Sam, who will be supporting the event by answering your queries and posting useful links in the chat. Tonight's event is part of the 2021 Festival of Debate, an annual programme coordinated by the For Impact social enterprise Opus Independence, based in Sheffield in the UK, which brings people together to share new ideas that can help shape our understanding of the world. This year's programme is Pay As You Feel to ensure all of our online events are free at the point of access. But we do rely on donations from audience members to help make it happen. So if you can, please do go to the festivalofdebate.com website and donate. The festival team will be monitoring the chat. We'd like to ask all audience members to be respectful of others and will remove anyone from our events who does not follow our Safer Festival policy, which is available on the website. If you'd like to ask any questions tonight, please do use the Q&A function, which is different to the chat function, and we will get as many questions as we can in the last 15 to 20 minutes of tonight's 60-minute live stream. We will, of course, be broadcasting on our social media channels this evening on YouTube and Facebook, if you just search for Festival of Debate, and on Twitter, you can find us at our handle @FestOfDebate, and there'll be links in the chat from the team members. But without any further ado, if Youre and Tubbs would like to put their mics and videos on, we will start tonight's event.
Hello, hello, hello. Thank you so much for having us, and so good to see you, Zane.
Nice to meet you too, Mr. Tubbs.
My name is Michael Tubbs, and we are from the great city of Stockton. And we're gonna have a conversation about beyond kind of theory, beyond ideas to actuality, and talk to Zane as a representative of the 125 people in Stockton who started receiving a guaranteed income of $500 in 2019. So before we jump into questions, I just want to say it's been amazing to see the momentum, even from our conversation we had just a couple of weeks ago. We have over 50 mayors in the states who have signed on to be parts of Mayors for Guaranteed Income. I just read something, I think in Wales, the government's going to do a Guaranteed Income pilot. I work as a special advisor for Governor Newsom. He's doing $35 million in government money to support the basic income pilots happening throughout the state of California. Mayor Eric Garcetti of LA is putting $24 million into a guaranteed income. And the United States government is providing a guaranteed income for families with children through a childhood tax credit that's going to hit people's bank accounts starting in July and will be monthly for a couple of years. And there's a lot of push and energy to make it permanent. And I say that to say that we are in a moment where we're almost there. And it's because of people like Zane, and not just their stories, but their experiences that really, again, highlight what we talk about when we talk about universal basic income, or we talk about a guaranteed income. And that is, we're talking about basic dignity. And before I turn to you, Zane, I just want to give sort of the findings that you'll hear from Zane, but were bared out in research. That number one, as you all know, a guaranteed income did not cause people to stop working. That number two, particularly in times of pandemics, guaranteed incomes are important for building economic resilience, for reducing economic volatility. And that number three, those who received a guaranteed income were able to be less stressed, less anxious, and to breathe. And that's why we're all so motivated and dedicated to this idea of creating the society and the world that we all deserve to live in. So now that all that's aside, Zane, I just have a bunch of questions for you. And my first question is, could you tell us sort of a little bit about you, particularly before 2018? So before SEED program, sort of, who was Zane, what was Zane doing, and what were some of the things Zane was thinking about, et cetera?
Well, I was working and I had just become unemployed in the beginning of 2018. I was door dashing, trying to really figure out what am I going to do as far as my insurance, because, you know, I have a condition where I have chronic migraines. And so I was trying to make ends meet. I was married. My husband was a contract truck driver. So if he didn't work, he didn't get paid. And if I didn't have money, you know what I'm saying, I needed money to help him, because prior to that, I was the breadwinner. So I worked for Department of Defense and I lost that job. I wasn't there any longer. So everything seemed like it just went south. I had just signed up for school. I was like, I'm going to go back to school. I got to figure out something for us, you know. And prior to that, I had got some mail, and I'm nosy. So I'm looking, I'm sitting here, I'm clipping coupons, the whole thing. And I came across this paper. I'm like, what is this? It was just one flyer. And I was like, I can call the number or take the survey. So at the time, my husband, I said, hey, you want to do this survey? He goes, no, I'm not going to take a survey. People are too nosy. I'm like, okay, well, I'll do it. I'll do the survey. So I'm sitting at the computer and I log in and I'm like, wow, it must have taken me 2 hours to fill it out, because I'm very specific. Like, I have to get everything out, my, you know, like everything. So it's asking me, how are you living? You know, are you going to check cashing places? And I'm like, oh, wow, that's me. You know, so that's how I was living. So I filled it out and did it and finished. And my school at the time, that wasn't my school yet, sent for me to go out to Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona. And I was coming back, sitting in the airport, and I had received a call from Seed. So there's people around and I'm on the phone, and it was just like, but, you know, I wanted to just scream like it was unreal. But I'm screaming and I'm thinking like it was like a one-time $500. So once I found out it was continuously, it was just like, I was just praising God, and I was just so overjoyed, because I was always arguing. Finances is an issue in a marriage, you know. So when that came, it was just like, I have help, you know, I can help him. Like,
Well, let me jump in, because I think that's such an important. No. There's such an important point, and I think one of the things I enjoyed the most about sort of the findings from the SEED program, which is, again, for you all listening, is the Guaranteed Income Program in Stockton, was just the impact on stress, was just the impact on sort of being able to breathe. And you talked about it a little bit in terms of sort of arguments with your partner, but could you talk a little bit more about sort of, so once that $500 started coming every month, no matter what you did or didn't do, like, how did that impact like your happiness, your stress, or did it impact it?
the arguments went down. So my stress level went down. I was worrying less. I set up my bills on it, those bills that I knew that were going to continuously come, and I didn't have to worry about them because I had that money that was coming in. I know it's 500, but I always tithe my church. So even though I paid 10% of my tithes out of these funds, I still had money left over because the way I budgeted those funds. My electric bill, car insurance, the utilities for my house that fed on there. So it was budgeted to where I knew these bills were recurring and this money was coming and I didn't have to pay it back. That was the biggest relief for me, not having to owe anyone. Because I'm already like, okay, I got to get out of this check cashing thing where I'm constantly borrowing, what, $255 to make ends meet. Now I'm out of the hole. I have $500 every month that I don't have to pay back. Whereas with this check cashing place, I'm paying them to rewrite this check and I'm steady not getting ahead. So it was just like, because I was trying to DoorDash and I didn't even have to DoorDash because the money I was making DoorDashing was not comparing to this 500 that was coming. So it kind of gave me some space to look for a job. or if he missed work, we were covered because that money was coming in. I even had money for my co-payments when I was using this supplemental insurance at the time. I don't know how God did it with this 500, but it was unbelievable. Like, I can't even explain it correctly for you to understand. I didn't even know I needed the help until it came. It was just.
Well, you said something interesting that I want to follow up on. You said that and because people always ask me these questions, whether it's talking to folks in the UK like we're doing now or talking to folks in the capital, they always say, well, how does guaranteed income help people find work? And you mentioned that too in your answer. You said like with the $500, you had the space to find work, to stop door dashing. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, if I'm out door dashing, delivering food, I don't have time to sit at home and go online and put my resume out and let people know, hey, I'm capable of doing this, because I have to try and hustle and bustle to pay the bills in the house. Whereas I'm looking for a job, I need a job so I can do that. That helped me. That really helped me. I didn't have to do that. I was able to look for work and knowing the bills were still going to get paid with that $500.
But that's what's so fascinating. It's this idea that we think people aren't working. No, the issue is that people are working, but oftentimes working in jobs that aren't careers and don't have the time to, like you said, apply. That takes time. To write the application, that takes time.
Yes.
Interview, that takes time. And a guaranteed income gives you the time or the ability to have time. And then we know that we started the program in 2019. And no one knew that 2020 was going to happen. And what's interesting and what I'll never forget, so I'm gonna ask you again, a conversation we had like in March, I think of last year, or maybe it was April, whenever the governor came down. And you talked about sort of how the guaranteed income helped in the pandemic. And I don't know if I told you this, but ever since you said that, that really opened my eyes to how a guaranteed income is also part of a health response. It's also part of sort of how folks are able to make decisions about what to do in a health pandemic. So could you talk to us about when COVID hit, how did the basic income sort of help you and your family?
By me having that $500 coming in and everyone else's life stopped. You know, everyone made a big deal about, oh, $500 isn't a lot of money. It's nothing. It is a lot of money when you don't have any money. So being that my bills were set up on that 500, nothing stopped for me because I had my guaranteed income. Whereas people were trying to sign up for unemployment, even that wasn't put in place yet. Everything else stopped, but I still had help. Not that I'm better than anyone else, but my help was there. If I didn't have seed, if I didn't have that $500, I would have been in a boat with everyone else, but I wasn't. I had that lifeline. I had that.
And I remember, and if I'm retelling this, or feel free to jump in, I remember one story you shared about how you didn't know whether you had COVID or not. And that the $500 was allowed you to at least get tested. And then you talked about sort of how when the unemployment benefits took a while to come, the $500 was helpful. So can you talk about that a little bit? Because I think the UK, their system is different. So they might not even understand kind of what dire position many Americans were in during COVID-19.
Well, I was sick and I wanted to get tested. I didn't know what was going on with me as far as my health. They kept saying, oh, it's an upper respiratory infection. I'm like, no, something's wrong with me. So I went to 2 different places to get help. I had heard of Project Baseline, but we didn't have it here in Stockton, California, in San Joaquin County. So I had spoke to my mother and she says, don't you know the Mayor Tubbs had brought it to Stockton? You should go get tested. And I was on the phone. I'm so emotional. I'm on the phone crying. I'm like, for real, Mom, really did he do it? I was like, Mom. She's like, yeah, I did. So I got on the computer and I put my information in, because if you didn't live within a certain, I guess, area, they wouldn't test you. You had to get tested within your own county. So I went, I got tested, and it was Good Friday, April 9th. I just remember like yesterday, I got tested. I got a call from a nurse. I got an email. It was Easter Sunday. And I had COVID-19. And the doctors were going to send me back to work. Oh, go back to work in 7 days. You're fine. I kept saying no. If I wouldn't have got tested through Project Baseline that Mayor Tubbs had put into place out here, I would have been going back to work where there's a company where there's a lot of people, and these people could have got sick. So I think that if I wasn't sharing with my family, my mom, the things that Mr. Tubbs do for Stockton, she wouldn't have threw me that lifeline and say, hey, do this, because we had that line of communication of what's been taking place in the city. There's been so many good changes. And
well, no. I mean, I think that for me is what's so powerful about this conversation. It's that it's not like a theory. It's not like a tweet. It's real life. And I think for me, what I took from that, I was like, wow, if she did not have that $500, she might not have even had taken the time to get tested, because she might feel like she had to go to work, or she would have been sick and not working, and then also with no money, which would have been more stress. So literally, I would tell everyone that for COVID-19, people are probably and you mentioned where you work. I was like, people are probably getting other people sick because they are afraid to take a day off work because they don't have.
You can't afford to be off work. You
Mm.
can't. It's like, do you stay home sick or do you go to work? You got to go to work.
Mm.
You can't afford to be off.
Especially if you don't know for sure. Like, for sure, if I don't go to work, I don't get paid. You don't know for sure if you have COVID or not. It could be I have COVID, I could have a flu, I could be tired. No, and literally I would tell people, like, people are literally dying because folks are poor. Like, people are literally dying in the hospital on ventilators because they don't have money and they don't have paid time off. And then I know you also mentioned sort of, and I don't know if it's the same in the UK, but in the States, even if you're like laid off for your job, et cetera, you pay in every paycheck on unemployment insurance.
Yes.
But I didn't realize that unemployment insurance was automatic. Like, I didn't realize you had to apply. I didn't realize you had to wait. So could you talk about sort of how long you had to wait for unemployment insurance to kick in after you were laid off, and sort of how the basic income helped with that in any way?
It took about, I think, 2 to 3 months to kick in. And they kept saying, it just had a standard questionnaire, and it's like A, B, C, or D. And you have to fall within these guidelines. And it's like, well, if I didn't quit my job and I didn't get laid off from my job, I'm not unemployed. How do I get unemployment? Where do I fit in? But I had my seed money, so it's like that stress wasn't there. Like some of the phone calls that I was getting, like maybe my daughter, or my ex, can you help me with my unemployment paperwork? And I'm like, I can do the best that I can. But there's a waiting period because they're trying to figure out what's going on.
And then while you're waiting, like, your bills aren't waiting.
No, no, they're piling up, but mine wasn't. I'm not mocking anyone, but mine didn't, because my bills was already set up on the seed program on the $500. If I didn't have that, car insurance gets backed up. They didn't have anything in place like, okay, this is COVID, so we have a protocol to help you with that. There wasn't any of that. It could have, my insurance could have relapsed, I could have got my direct TV could have been turned off. I know it's a privilege to have that, but I have that. These bills add up. I even had my cell phone bill on there. So these bills that were small, they could have got bigger and bigger. When I say small, like if I'm working, they're small, but if I'm not working, they're huge. You don't have the money, it's huge. $35 is a lot of money when you don't work. That's a lot, so every dollar counts. It really does.
Well, to that point, I'm known to stay in an argument about something. And one of the arguments I've been having for the past couple of years has been how we're wasting money. Like even now, when the US government's thinking about kind of a COVID response, or even the stuff I'm helping the Governor Newsom with now, people are saying like to give people money is wasting money. Like we might as well just throw the money away. What would you say to that? Like, is giving folks $500 or $1,000 a month, is that wasting money? Is that throwing the money away?
How they went about things when COVID hit, that was wasting money. If they would have had this program in play for everybody, there wouldn't have been no panic. People wouldn't have been trying to freak out, like, what do I do? Because they would have had UI. That's not wasting money. You don't realize you need the help till it comes. People need help. They're not begging for you to say, give me your money. Can I just get a little bit of help for a little bit of time to get where I need to be? And you don't have to pay it back. So that's the help. I mean, it's not like everyone's going to make the same choices, but that's a good choice. That's a great seed to plant. And then the harvest that you reap, you never know who you're hiring. You never know who you're helping. People don't stay down forever. No, it's not a waste of money. People need help. And I think that when you get the help, then maybe some of these people that's committing crimes, they're doing it because they're desperate. They're making bad choices because of a need. No, it's not. No, it's not a waste of money.
Yeah, and what I appreciate about you is, like me, you're also a person of faith. So I always am really confused when I talk to folks who are Christian, who are like, this is against what God wants. And I'm like, maybe I just read the Bible different, but I think God and Jesus was about helping people. Like when folks were hungry, he didn't say, go fish. He gave them some fish and some bread. Like when folks were sick, he was like, let me heal. So I think to the point that we have to, how to get people to think about sort of, we don't have to have suffering. Like we literally don't have to have people suffering and struggling for basics. Like we don't have to do that. And it actually doesn't help anyone that we have that, because we pay for it in so many other ways. And I think what you said really resonated with me when you said you don't know who you're hiring. Like I think a part of guaranteed income is also unleashing people's potential, showing that talent is universal. Like the issue isn't that talent's only in some places, it's that some people don't have the opportunity to develop, showcase their talent. So one of the questions I would get all the time during the pilot was, well, what happens after the program's over? Like, sure, it helps, and that's why it needs to be a permanent policy. That's what we're fighting for. But in the interim, they're not permanent policies yet. So what, after February, the last seed disbursement, like what happened? Like was it still able to help you get in a better position now than you were 2 years ago? Or is it back to sort of where you were 2 years ago?
It helped me because I knew when it was going to end. Now, it's not like, oh, it just came and was snatched away. It was like I had a time frame. It's like, okay, whatever I need to do, I have help getting there. So it's like, say, hey, Mr. Tubbs, I need a loan. Okay, well, you make sure you pay me back. I'll help you every month, but you give me when up to this time, I need all this money back. Then that kind of like, can I afford to do this? Will I be okay by this time frame to give this money back? Will there be any changes? But by not having to pay back that money, each step of the way, it's like so many bricks is just like off of my shoulder. Like it's like having that monkey off my back. Like, okay, I can focus on what I need to do, not knowing I got to pay someone back. Being in debt is it's like, it's so stressful. And not being able to pay your bills, it's like, well, do I go buy bread or do I pay my electricity bill? It's like making choices that you shouldn't have to make. And I just tell people, what if it was you? You know, a person that's rich, they don't know how to be poor. But a person that's poor, they know how to make it work. That's how it is. So I knew what my end was going to be. So it helped me. I mean, it helped me by when I split up from my husband. If I didn't have that money, that's like my little nest, I wouldn't have been able to move out into my own place because I knew I had that help with my utilities and stuff. I still had that money coming, you know, that helped me.
Absolutely. And let me, I see and I don't know, you know, things don't translate well over text. So I don't know what the tone of the question from Lois is, but it talks about sort of, first, they thank you for sharing your story. And it talks about an experiment in Ontario where of all the people that were unemployed, 20% ended up not being unemployed, which sounds like a win. If like 100 people were unemployed and now afterwards 80 people are unemployed, that's a net positive 20 people who are no longer unemployed. So I'm not sure how that's negative. And then they also talk about how we need more data to get the bigger picture. And I think that's absolutely correct. But to your point, it depends on what you're measuring, right? Because there's so many more dimensions. Like employment is just one number. We know that in the case of Stockton, employment actually increased, but we also know that people aren't just here to work. People are here to be healthy and happy and productive. And that's also an important thing to consider. They also talk about how, but there's also like dozens of pilots going across the United States at hundreds to thousands of people scale. So we'll have more data, but at some point, the data is going to say the same thing and it becomes a policy decision. I think that's why the questions in the kind of storytelling is so important, because I mean, again, the issue is like the data is pretty consistent about sort of the positive impacts of guaranteed income, whether it's in Ontario, United States, Finland, et cetera. The issue is policy. But thank you for that question. I'm gonna take a second on it and go through and see if there's any other questions before I go into more. Let's see. There's a question about, I think we already answered this about UBI being a waste of money. So thank you for that. And someone asked about just in terms of California, how big is $500? Like $500, is that a big amount of money, a small amount of money? I think the folks across the pond are trying to figure out sort of what does $500 actually mean in terms of real buying power in California?
Well, for me, $500, when you don't have any money, $500 can feel like $1 million because you have help. And that's $500 you don't have to get back. And you know it's coming consistently. It's reoccurring. And you don't have to worry about the next month of bills because you already know that you have the funds to pay those bills. It's already set up. Like, to that account on that card with those funds, the disbursement is going to be out there faithfully. And it's giving me time to do what I need to do as far as looking for work at that time and not worrying about how I'm going to pay that bill. That bill is getting paid while I'm trying to better myself to get to where I need to be.
Absolutely. And let me just jump in, because I think also one of the things you said that was super helpful was this idea of time, and how sort of the best use of your time may not be to work yourself to death. That maybe you can work less hours so you can take care of your kids, or spend more time with your family, or spend more time with your partner, or spend more time with your dog, or spend more time being a person. So this so I was actually, one of the things I really appreciate about stories like yours and the data from Stockton was this idea that folks should be able to own their time. Like your time is to wake up and just work. And if you're working 12 hours, maybe working less to 8 hours is a good thing. And actually a positive benefit. Maybe working less is a good thing, right? Maybe working less and spending more time doing other things is a positive thing we should want in society. And then there's another question. I think I'm gonna take this one. It's about what's the minimum number of people sample size to recommend for a micro pilot? And I think, and Suki, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, but at least 125 people allows for an evaluation that has some level of significance and some level of findings that you can make some generalizations around. And then there's another question about what would you do differently if, when you get to run more guaranteed income pilots, for example? So what do you think, Zana? That's a good question for you too. Like if you were to design, like, all right, based on your experience and based on how you see it work, if I gave you $1 million and said, I want you to design a guaranteed income program, what type of people would you pick? Would it be random? Would it be this group or that group? Like, how would you decide who should get the guaranteed income?
It would be random because you don't know a person's situation. Like I used to work for Department of Defense. I never thought my financial situation would change. So you can't just look at a person and say that person don't need help, because some people are proud, which is a sin. And then some people are humble. So usually people that say, hey, I need help, those are people, they say, oh, you don't need no help, you're fine. And people don't realize they need the help until it comes, because they just won't say anything, especially if people are painted a certain way. Like, you know, hey, I don't need any help. They think that I'm like this, or they think I have money. So I'm just going to let them think that and don't ask for help and keep drowning. So I think that random is good, you know, like how it was done for me, you know, by people not reading their mail. I hate to say it, they lost out on a mighty blessing. That was awesome. And I felt like, Lord, thank you, you know, and I was just excited. So that right there, it can be set up. I don't see anything different, honestly, how it was done. I mean, a lot of people was upset because they were like, well, where's my funds? Where's my money? And I'm like, what are you talking about? You know, I had a member of my church say, well, I thought it was just for my neighborhood. And I was like, well, what makes you different from me? We're the same. God loves us the same. Check your mail. Read your mail. I think I did get that. I carried that little paper with me for the longest in my wallet, folded up in my wallet. And she said, oh, I didn't even think it was anything. I just thought it was just advertising. I think I threw it away because the envelope said to the resident of. And it's like, you never know what you're going to get. You have to read your mail. You can't make a person do something.
Well, and I think to your point, I was going to give a different answer, but after hearing your answer, I think my answer would be and you said it so well, you just don't know. And part of guaranteed income or universal basic income is really having government officials recognize what we don't know. And what we don't know is all the ways in which people need money. What we don't know is every single person who's struggling financially. What we do know is that policy is scale. So I would say if I was to do it again, it would be a policy. It would be a policy, and we could start where the federal government is now for people, households making $150K and less, which is not 100%, but it's 90% of Americans. And we would start there because you just really, because I was gonna say I was focused on individuals who are homeless, et cetera, but I think based on what you said, it's like, again, you don't know, Michael. So what you do know is that policy can absolutely can absolutely help. And then I guess before let me see if there's any other questions before I start opining some more. And there's a question about what are the biggest barriers to implementation of basic income? And I think you said it, I said it, it's really political will. But I think it's also seeing each other, like giving other people the benefit of the doubt you give yourself. So if you think you would do a good job with $500, extend that same level of grace to your neighbor and say, you know, if I'm gonna do a good job, I think they're gonna do a good job too, because you're actually not better than them.
I want to say something about income. By the time, take a person that probably makes $60,000 a year. So, and it's only one person in the household that works, and they may have 2 or more kids. a married couple, by the time they're done paying their mortgage or their rent, their life insurance, their medical premium, buying groceries, sometimes buying groceries is like the last thing on the list because they're trying to keep a roof over their head, clothes for the kids, the wife. Having $500 after all their bills are paid, sometimes they don't even have any money left. They're still struggling, but because of people on the outside looking in, they don't want to make it seem like they're struggling, and they're borrowing money from someone else just to buy food to put in the house. Because of their income, they may not qualify for food stamps. So they're too proud to go to the food bank, but if someone comes over and drop off food, then they'll accept the help. So people are still struggling with good jobs. They're still struggling.
Absolutely. So I think, I have no other, if there's any other questions, please type them in the Q&A. And I would say, Zane, while we wait for the last couple of questions, just thank you for your leadership, for your work, for your voice, for your story. Because again, we're just going to get, I am 100% convinced of this. We are going to get to a point in the United States, but also across the world, where we recognize that poverty doesn't really help us like that people shouldn't have to be stressed and anxious over the basics needed to be human, and that we actually understand that dignity is not attached to work, but it's just who we are as people, and we should treat people that way. And literally you, the 124 other people in Stockton were really instrumental in that change. So I hope you take heart and realize that you didn't just get $500 a month for 2 years, but you gave us so much story, so much insight, and an example to point to. So when someone tells me that guaranteed income makes people lazy, I say, no. I know a person who I talked to who did this with the money. Or guaranteed income will do this and make people not work. No. I know a person. So again, I thank you for your leadership, and to the whole festival of debate team, I thank you for this conversation we're having globally. About sort of, no matter where you live in this world, you deserve an income floor. That's it. Not luxury, not yachts, fine, but like enough to pay your bills. And I think together we'll get to that world. So again, thank you all for your time. Thanks for having us. I'm looking forward to continued dialogue and conversation, and we will push together and make guaranteed income a reality in the United States, in the UK, and across the world.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's been absolutely amazing. A huge thank you to Chiu and Sam for supporting on the call this evening, to Suki and Cameron at Mayors for Guaranteed Income for helping coordinating this event. A huge thank you to Tubbs for all of your fantastic work in creating us this amazing thing to be able to have a conversation about and hosting today. And an absolutely massive thank you to Sana for sharing your incredible story so openly and genuinely. That for me, there isn't anything more powerful than the stories of real life to convince us why this thing is so important. So thank you so much for sharing this evening for us, and for joining us from California at lunchtime from your end. Very much appreciated. I hope we stay in touch and keep working together to do more. For everybody else on the call, this is one of many events available on the Festival of Debate. So please do log on to the festivalofdebate.com website and join us for other events. We'll hopefully see you all soon. If there's anything you didn't catch, please do get in touch and use the watch again features on the website and all across social media. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, and we will hopefully see you again all soon. Thank you so much for that. That was amazing.
You're welcome. I was trying to keep from crying because I'm just so grateful for all that's been done. You know, you have no idea. That's just a little bit, you know, like it's a lot. It's really a lot.
I can tell.
It's a blessing.
Thank you.
It's
That
really
was really powerful for lots of learning. I don't think I have actually met a recipient of a guaranteed income. So this was really informative. Thank you so much. And thanks for sharing so generously as well.
You're welcome. You're very
Fantastic.
welcome.
Thank you again. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too. Bye-bye. Thank
Cheers.
you for having me. It was a blessing. It was an honor.
The honor was ours. Thank you.
Bye-bye.